What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. Time for my 5 takeaways from Week 6, and we had some great games in Week 6. Started with Oklahoma, Texas, LSU, Missouri. Of course, Texas A&M, Alabama was a really good game. We saw USC have to go to triple overtime against Arizona. There were a lot of good games, and let's just get into it here. My first takeaway is Oklahoma. Oklahoma is a playoff contender, and after their win over Texas, they've got a really good shot, and really kind of coming out of nowhere. I guess if you just look at where they finished last year, this team is much better, and where they're better is on defense. They've just made such an improvement there, and we saw that with the roster upgrades, especially the pass rushers that they added. And just Brent Venables going into year 2. Overall, this defense is just a lot better. They went toe-to-toe with Texas and beat them. They beat Texas. They were the more physical team. Was really surprised, I guess, with the way that they won this game. If you take out the turnovers, though, then what happens here? You know, turnovers were huge in this game. And so I think this is probably going to be, we're going to see a rematch in the Big 12 Championship. And that could very well be a game that is where the winner will get into the college football playoff. But Oklahoma, you look at the rest of their schedule, you know, they've got a tricky game on the road at Kansas. But, I mean, overall, they will be favored by probably a good bit in the rest of their games. And so they're in a great spot. I don't think Texas is out of it. Like I just said, I think there's a really good chance that those two teams will play in the Big 12 Championship, and the winner will go to the Big 12 Championship game, and to the college football playoff, I should say. And you just look at the rest of the Big 12, there's just no competition for these two teams. You know, Kansas State has turned out to be a disappointment. Kansas, pretty good team, but we saw them get blown out by Texas. TCU has fallen off big time. Texas Tech has been a disappointment. West Virginia has been a surprise. We'll see if maybe they can have something to say about it. But I feel pretty confident right now saying that it'll be Oklahoma and Texas again in the Big 12 Championship. And as long as these two teams take care of business the rest of the regular season, even if Oklahoma were to lose a game, even if they get upset somewhere, that game probably still is going to be a game where the winner will go to the college football playoff. So you have to put Oklahoma in that top group of contenders now. And then we go to number 2 here. The SEC still goes through Georgia and Alabama. We'll start with Georgia. We finally saw what we knew they were capable of against Kentucky. And I had a feeling, if you watch my prediction video last week, I felt like Georgia was going to win pretty easily. I just felt like it was time. I felt like we're far enough into the season. I know they've had their struggles, but it's going to all come together pretty soon. A big game, playing at home. I just felt like it was all going to come together for them. The defense finally looking like a Georgia defense, and the offense starting to make some plays as well. So Georgia, really impressive. I think they probably are still the front runners in the SEC, but watch out for Alabama. I think Alabama, you look at the improvement of Jalen Milroe, it's definitely there, and Jermaine Burton emerging as a guy that he can go to throwing the football. All of a sudden, they've got it's not going to be the best passing attack in the country, but they've got a very serviceable passing attack to go with a really good run game, even though they didn't run it great against Texas A&M. The offensive line is getting better. The defense is really, really good, and just because of how good their defense is, that's going to make them probably favorites in the rest of their games in the regular season. So Alabama and Georgia, it feels like they're going to probably wind up in that SEC championship game. You know, you look at LSU, so many issues on defense. Texas A&M, they had their opportunity here. They didn't get it done. You know, I don't think there's anyone in the East, really. I don't know if Tennessee catches fire. Maybe they could make a run. But it feels like it's going to be a rematch of these two teams in the SEC championship based off of what we've seen so far. And again, Alabama just a much, much better team than they were early in the season, already making some big improvements. So let's go to number 3 now. Louisville and North Carolina are real threats in the ACC. So how about this win for Louisville? A pull away late against Notre Dame. Really, really impressed with this team. They've been getting it done on both sides of the ball. I know they had a scare against NC State, didn't play great in that game. They've been a little inconsistent so far this season, but finally get a big stage and we see what they're capable of. And you look at the rest of their schedule, they've got a really good shot to be in that ACC championship game. And so does North Carolina. North Carolina taking care of business against a pretty good Syracuse team. They blow them out. Really impressed with them. So I know it's Florida State in the ACC. Everyone's got them as the favorites, but watch out for Louisville and North Carolina. And depending on how things go, you never know. We could actually see Louisville, North Carolina in the ACC championship instead of Florida State. if we see some upsets there for the Noles. So it feels like a 3-team race in the ACC, and it's going to be really exciting. Clemson's struggling against Wake Forest. I just don't think that team's going to get it done. Miami either. I think it's really those teams. Those are the teams that are going to determine the ACC, and more on Miami here. So I just wanted to touch on these two teams for a second. I'll come to Miami in just a second. But Texas A&M and Miami. So I talked about when they played, and we were doing our takeaways. I said, did that game tell us that these two teams are both really, really good? Or are they both still really not quite there yet? And I think now we have learned these teams are not contenders. They're not there yet. Miami, I mean, there's really no excuse for the performance against Georgia Tech. That's a game that they should win pretty easily. I know it was a really motivated Georgia Tech team, but still, that's just a game that you don't lose. But let's just talk about the terrible decision. I don't even know how to put words to it. I'm sure you've all seen what happened with Miami deciding to run the ball instead of taking a knee. Georgia Tech calls the fumble. They come right down, score, win the game. There's just no excuse for that. So Miami could still be undefeated if you just take a knee there. Just a horrible decision. And you can go back when Mario Cristobal was at Oregon. He had the play where they fumbled there against Stanford when they could have taken a knee and pretty much taken the clock all the way down. So this is the second time that's really happened. This one obviously was even worse. And I guess I was reading something this morning that said that they never take a knee. His teams never take a knee. They always run the ball at the end. So, I mean, that's just stupidity, really. I mean, it is what it is. So, Miami, just an embarrassing way to lose there. Texas A&M, they're close. You know, they played Alabama tough, but with 2 losses now, I mean, they're not really going to be contenders. And I think they had to win that game to have a chance to get to the SEC championship. So, Aggies not really contenders. Miami, I just don't think they're good enough. This is a game that they had to win. They could still maybe go on and have a pretty good year, but they're not, I don't think, going to get to the ACC championship. So these are 2 teams, again, that I thought maybe they're top 10 teams. Maybe they're right there, or maybe they're just not there yet. And I think we learned that they're just not there yet based off of this past weekend. So let's go to the final takeaway. USC. USC has a lot of work to do. Had to go to triple overtime to beat Arizona. Defense still has a lot of work to do. And I'm just going to kind of big picture here, take a look at the Pac-12. So with USC not being as good as I think we expected them to be, and with some tough games on the schedule, I don't know that they're even going to make it to the Pac-12 championship. And they can still turn things around. The good news for the Trojans is they're still undefeated. And so everything's still right there in front of them. But just have not been playing great football, especially on defense. But you look at the Pac-12, it feels like Utah, Oregon State, UCLA, Washington State, those 4 teams are all kind of even, but they are clearly behind the top teams in the Pac-12. And I think Oregon and Washington have proven that they are the top teams in the Pac-12. But is USC there with them? Are they going to have a chance to maybe knock one or both of them off? Or are they closer to those other teams, Utah, Oregon State, Washington State, and UCLA? At this point, it's hard to say. I think USC has the potential to be in that top tier, but I don't know. It's definitely concerning if I'm a USC fan. Their struggles against Arizona State, Arizona now, even allowing Colorado to come back. Very concerned if I'm a USC fan. So it may be that we get Oregon, Washington, who they're going to play this weekend, in a rematch in the Pac-12 championship. Feels like those might be the 2 best teams in the conference if USC does not get it together. So we'll find out. USC has Notre Dame coming up. That'll be a big one. Find out a lot about really both of those teams. We'll see if Notre Dame can bounce back from a tough loss to Louisville. But we're starting to see things shape up here in college football. You know, the Big Ten, I think it's still a battle between Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State, like we expected it to be. Talked about the SEC with Georgia and Alabama. Pac-12, maybe it's Washington, Oregon, or maybe USC is in that conversation. The Big 12, it's clearly Texas and Oklahoma. And the ACC now, it's Florida State, North Carolina, and Louisville. So some surprises in there. We're still really only about halfway through the season. Some teams have played half of their games. Some of them have only played 5. And so we're going to learn more as we get through the month of October. We'll start getting those playoff rankings very soon as this college football season is flying by. Give me your takeaways from Week 6 down in the comments below.